We got CPI, consumer price inflation today. Lots of numbers coming in. What does it all mean for the Fed rate decision? What does it mean for the economy? Where does Jamie Dimon see the worst case scenario? We're going to talk about that and more. Plus, we're going to talk about 5 comments from the Iced Coffee Hour interview that I just felt I needed to address head on. Because again, when you get on a big platform like the Iced Coffee Hour, it brings in a new crew, and I wanted to make sure we address some of the questions or comments. But let's get started with CPI. What happened? What was expected? And what happened last month? Of course, folks, remember, when we talk inflation, specifically CPI, we always talk about 4 numbers. We talk about headline and core. We talk about month on month and year on year. So let's go to headline first. Last month, CPI headline was 2.9%. It was expected to fall to 2.5%, which is a significant 1-month drop. And of course, it came in actually on the number. It came in at 2.5%. Folks, we haven't seen an inflation print at 2.5% since March of 2021. It has been, what is that, 3.5 years since we've seen inflation at 2.5% headline. Okay, what happened month on month? Last month, 0.2. Expected this month, 0.2. Actual, 0.2. We now seem to see inflation headline kind of baselining itself. If you go back and you zoom out, you will see we've been at 0.2 for several months, and it appears that we are cooling. Well, let's talk about core. Often the Fed says the core is where they look because they can't really impact oil and food, so they tell us to look at core. Core last month, 3.2. Expectations, flat, 3.2. Actual, 3.2. So again, when we look at core, we are still, we are still above 3, but again, we seem to be baselining. We seem to be plateauing there. Now, for the one that missed. The one that missed, again, last month was 0.2. Expectations were 0.2. We actually got core month on month with a little bit of a hot read at 0.3%. Is this a sign of more to come? Is this a sign that there's something unusual in the data? We're going to break some of that down now. So let's talk about where inflation is by category. I found 3 categories that kind of stood out to me. One is car insurance. I don't know if you've gotten a recent quote on car insurance, which I have, and I can tell you that, yes, this is very true. Car insurance currently is posting a 16.5% year-on-year increase. That is significant. Transportation, 7.9%. And then finally, rent, aka shelter, still posting a 5%. And if memory serves, I think that is up from last month. I think inflation for rent was something in a 4s last month. I didn't verify that this morning, but it certainly feels that way. Again, we've talked about for well over a year now that rent is a backwards or lagging indicator. We've talked about the roller coaster being 12 carts, and as each month rolls over, you'll see it slowly unwind. Got a calculation for CPI headline X rent. So again, CPI headline includes oil, includes food. If you take headline X shelter, only remove shelter, only, you actually get a CPI headline reading of 1.2. Think about that. We know on this channel that shelter inflation is not 5%. It is simply not 5%. Maybe it was, but it is not 5% today. So if you correct for the stupidity of the current shelter calculation, you will see that the Fed has already achieved their inflation target of 2% average. It's 1.2. All right, So what does this all mean? Does this change everything? Got a question here from Ralston about why remove shelter. Well, I would never remove shelter. Shelter is the largest impact on inflation. What I am simply trying to state is we should correct for the broken calculation. Shelter is important. I would argue outside of food, it's the most important. But unlike the other inflation calculations, which are taken by actuals, shelter and rent is not calculated in the same way. I would simply ask you, the audience, do you think shelter inflation is 5% today? If you go and look at apartments.com, you go and look at all these other indications, we are seeing rents below 1%. So I am not saying shelter is unimportant. I would never advise removing it. That would be stupid. But given that we have a lot more access to up-to-date information, I would just ask the Fed or whoever calculates this CPI to be a little bit more up-to-date instead of looking at 12 months of history. That is simply my point about shelter, is it's not an accurate number today. There you go. So what we have seen is the market has already pivoted. It was at one point here in the last couple of days, 50-50 coin flip for 50 or 25. We are now seeing an 85% chance that we'll get a 25 basis point cut next Wednesday. Yes, folks, the Fed meeting is 1 week away. That means that there's a 15% chance of a 50 basis point cut. I sit here today, I still don't have an opinion. And that's pretty rare, right? I love making calls. I love sharing with you my thoughts. I actually think it actually feels to me that if we get another soft PPI reading tomorrow, we get an unemployment report that's, kind of standard, the Thursday unemployment report, that, I could see the Fed going 50. I could. I don't think it's warranted. I think, frankly, 0 is warranted. I still want them to push this rate decision to November. But, you could certainly see them going, hey, we're going to get this thing started. We're going to go big. We're going to try to establish that soft landing. I don't know that a quarter point buys you anything. I think if you go for the 50, it kind of sets the stage. Although the other thing we have is the SOP, the dot plot coming from the Fed next Wednesday. And you could really use the dot plot to orchestrate and clearly communicate the size and rate of rate cuts. The one thing that is true, if you've monitored the Fed for 30 years like I have, is once rate cuts start, it is never one and done. So again, we are going to be on a rate cutting cycle. Will it be 100 basis points? Will it be 200 basis points? Where will it stop? That is the question at hand. Folks, we're already seeing financial institutions cutting expectations. JP Morgan had to go out yesterday and pre-announce that the Fed rate cutting cycle will lower or hurt net interest margin. Net interest margin obviously is what they pay their depositors and what they get from the banks for buying T-bills. And again, the bank said, hey, guys, wake up. Your expectations for net interest margin are too high. And I believe you saw JP Morgan take quite the hit, likely with other banks or financial institutions as well. Let's talk about JP Morgan, more specifically, Jamie Dimon. Jamie Dimon was once again in front of a microphone, painting an interesting picture of the economy. JP Morgan highlights, or I should say, strike that, not JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon. This is Jamie Dimon's opinion. Jamie Dimon says the possibility of stagflation hitting the U.S. economy isn't off the table. Frankly, Anna Kelly, our Tuesday guest, agrees with that. She's been bringing stagflation to the table for well over a year. Lastly, what does Jamie Dimon say about stagflation? We need to hear this. Stagflation is the worst possible outcome. Jamie Dimon would rather have a flat-out recession than stagflation. Now, why is that? Why is Jamie Dimon hoping for a recession and not stagflation? Well, quite simply, folks, as we've talked about for the last year or so, the Fed's tools know how to work in a recession. They also know how to work with high inflation. What if we have an environment of low growth and high inflation, aka stagflation? Any tool that the Fed has will help one and hurt the other. This is why stagflation is often called the worst case scenario. Let's talk about a very exciting announcement from Lance Lambert and Resi Club. Lance Lambert and his team are throwing a Resi Day in New York City, Friday, November 8th. Friday, November 8th, I will be in New York. I will be one of the speakers or panelists on Resi Day. If you are in the New York area and you come out, do me a favor, bring your books. I would love to autograph them for you, take a picture, whatever you would like. Again, if you want to know more about Resi Day, you can follow Lance Lambert on Twitter. News Lambert is his handle, or you can go to resiclubanalytics.com and see all of the great data there. I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about September 11th. September 11th, for my generation, is one of those days that you will never forget. September 11th, 2001 was 23 years ago. In my generation, Gen X, it is one of those days that we will never forget. Everybody I know in my generation remembers where they were when they heard the horrible news first. I think I've told the story before, but we'll do it again in remembrance. I was driving to work for an early morning presentation on the East Coast via the web. And my radio station of choice was talking about an airplane hitting the first Twin Tower. My radio station of choice happened to play practical jokes all the time. I thought this one was particularly disgusting, and I didn't want anything to do with it. So I changed the channel. Lo and behold, the same voice with the same story going on was on. I then got to the office about 5 minutes later. I lived very close to the office, and I turned on the internet, and life was never the same. September 11th, 2001, horrible day. And for Gen X, it's one of those days that we will never forget. So again, not only for the loss of life for the folks in the tower, but the loss of life for the first responders who were racing in to help. It was a horrible, horrible day. All right, I don't know how to transition from that, so we just will. Let's talk about a couple of earnings that I highlighted over the weekend that were important. I said over the weekend that Dave & Buster's would be the most interesting earnings for me this week because I want to know what's going on with the consumer. I want to know if they're still going out and buying experiences. Well, it's pretty interesting. Dave & Buster's blew out earnings. They beat earnings by, 15, 16 cents, something significant. But they missed on revenue. They missed on same-store sales. So folks, if you've heard me for the last year or so, I was an accountant. I know how you can go in and make legal assumptions to impact earnings, but you can't fake revenue. So the fact that revenue was down significantly year on year, the fact that same-store sales were down, not good in my opinion. So when I was looking at Dave & Buster's, to me, it looks like the consumer is truly pulling back. Again, what I was looking for is the consumer is still spending. And again, it looks like the consumer is pulling back. We also had earnings from GME, GameStop. Sales decline of 20%. Plus, GameStop executives are going to hit you with a 20 million share offering. When are they going to stop hitting you with more shares? Crazy what that team is doing. I do want you to know that there is an accountability group today in our wonderful One Rental at a Time school community. You need to join the school community, get around other amazing people doing the same thing. It is only $20 a month. We have 2 accountability groups. Again, one today led by Frank, Old Guy REI. Sunday's accountability group is led by Jared. And just to highlight what was talked about last Sunday, they talked about novations, sub 2, direct to seller, cash reserves, lending, conventional, DSCR, and FHA. Folks, these accountability groups typically run 90 minutes, and you need to come, ask your questions, and hold yourself accountable. Also, there's all that free training and courses, live millionaire discussions where you can ask your favorite millionaire questions. So join school. It is $20 a month. You won't regret it. All right, folks, let's talk about this iced coffee hour interview, which I was lucky enough to have with Graham and Jack. I want to appreciate, again, all the One Rental at a Time fans who took the time to watch, leave wonderful, heartwarming comments. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I did get 5 comments from new viewers who probably don't know my story, so I thought I would highlight those here because, again, we will bring in new audience. Number 1. Grinding day after day to build wealth is not the right answer for everyone. Folks, I've admitted many times, and most recently in an interview with Anna Kelly, that she and I both did it wrong. We should have found ways to celebrate the journey. We should have found more ways to be with our children. We should have found more ways to kind of be not so diabolically focused. I agree with this comment in post. I think we should be more open to celebrating the journey and taking small victories. I completely agree. Unfortunately, when I tell my story, I have to tell my story. If the interviewer happens to ask about, mistakes and things of that nature, I will, of course, share that one. So again, to the commenter who said that, I agree with you. I agree. What I did was not for everyone. In fact, I don't even recommend it for anyone. It's not a process that I would look to do over. Number 2, unless you come from money, you are going to be poor and broke your entire life. I do not know where this comment comes from. We bring on millionaires all the time who came from nothing. My story comes from nothing. I think there's just a feeling out there of defeat. This is one of the things that I'm striving for. I want people to know it's possible. Why do I talk about getting to 4 and not getting to 100? Because it's possible. If you don't want to believe it's possible, stop watching. I am working my ass off. I am bringing dozens of people to this channel every week with new stories and new strategies. We have 9th grade dropouts. We have people with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debts. We have teenage mothers. We have Section 8 house. If you don't believe it's possible, go away. If you think it's possible, I'm here for you. I just can't stand that woe is me attitude. It's just, I don't get it. All right, number 3, tough luck millennials. We all miss the opportunities for wealth. Now back to minimum wage. Wow. Giving up. I can't stand that attitude. I hate crash bros. I hate doomers, but I would rather deal with a doomer than somebody that's already given up on life. There are plenty of ways that you can get started. We have talked to people that have house hacked. We have talked to 203K loans. We just stop this loser attitude. It's sickening. Yes, the United States is not perfect, but the capitalist system that we have means you can change your station just by doing a few things. Skilling up, living below your means, buying assets, and doing it for a decade. Exhausting. Number 4, The buy box strategy might work in the Midwest, but it won't work in New York City. The buy box is a tool to learn a skill. It is not something that guarantees a deal. Remember, as I said in the interview, the Iced Coffee Hour, I believe real estate investing is a skill. Because it's a skill, it can be learned, it can be honed, it can lead to work. Next, I want to agree with you. Not all markets, like New York City, like the Silicon Valley, where I live, produce cash flow. So, after you learn the skill, Mr. New York City, get off your lazy ass and figure out what markets are an hour or 2 hours, or in my case, 2.5 hours away. And I suspect you too can find cash flow. And number 5, I had to chuckle when I read it. How did this guy create 2,300 videos a year? Folks, I guess I've created 2,300 videos a year. I have no idea. All I want to do is thank all my millionaire contributors, because without them, this channel would not exist. Without all these followers, the channel wouldn't exist. All I can tell you is no editing and being authentic, having a schedule. We record Sunday through Thursday. We do videos 8, 9, and 10. Then I go on with my day. Folks, at the end of the day, I want you to know that we can grow the middle class together. I want you to know that you too can get wealthy. Never said it would be easy, but the process is pretty simple, right? Create discretionary income, become elite, do it for a decade. I hope to see you join the school community. I will admit the school community is not growing, and it's not growing because I don't talk about it. We are stuck at 250 subscribers. We've been there, or members. We've been there since I had that trip to Iceland. I want to celebrate the school community, more folks joining, accountability groups, 10-week boot camp, whatever it needs. Join school. You won't be disappointed. Also, don't forget our Vegas event. We have sold 80 tickets. Hope to see you February 15th and 16th. Folks, take care of yourself. I get to talk to Dion and Matt at 8. At 9 o'clock, we get the one and only Adrian Hernandez. At 10, we get Matt, the mortgage guy. And 10:30, we get Bo, the concierge to small business. So I have an exciting day ahead of myself. I hope you have an exciting day. Like, subscribe, comment. Peace.